Dear colleagues, let me present the results of our scientific work performed during the last 11 years. The presentation structure has been depicted on the second slide. What is a semantic kernel? It is a set of keywords which annotate the real definition of a product or a service in virtual space. Thus, a semantic kernel is described as an annotation of a piece of knowledge. Usually, at the very moment we embedded the kernel to website content. The simplest approach to consider the semantic kernel is to represent the source text as a bag of terms with its subsequent clustering. As it was established, we should distinguish three clusters of terms: geography, product or service, and time. Slide number 3. We present the first attempt to describe the semantic kernel mathematically and arithmetically. The idea behind our approach is to have a bag of words by clustering terms into three categories to form the semantic kernel of a website. At the same time, we must understand that the kernel depends on time, or rather the version of web content that is contained in the content management system. For example, in the WordPress system, each web page has its own version at a given point in time. Further, the kernel depends on the marketing strategy followed by the seller of the product or service. Depending on the requirements of the strategy, the web content changes and accordingly the kernel. In our approach, we gradually combine the terms AI and AJ from the web contents bag of words. When we form a new class, we then test the A with index F term for belonging. To assess the place in which the semantic kernel is involved, we consider the following business process. Slide number 4. A general outline for solving the problem is presented in slide number 5. We propose to generate an XML file according to the RDF scheme, which will take into account both the terms themselves and the links to them both on the website, on the web page, and on the internet. The paper proposes a clustering algorithm. Slide number 6. Its main difference is that you need to take into account overlapping terms as well as storylines in web content. This will simplify the semantic kernel as much as possible. This algorithm operates on the basis of the following mathematical model. Slide number 7. It is based on the following assumptions. First, we will assume that the kernel is formed by terms that belong to the three dictionaries. Accordingly, there are dictionaries of terms describing a product, time, as well as geography and location on the map. That is, we indicate where, when, and what product or service we want to sell or buy. To describe the semantic kernel, we introduce a vector n with point that consists of 5 components. Each component, dpgm, is a coordinate of the term which takes a boolean value. 1 is if the term is in the kernel and 0 if not. A component bigger one L describes the presence or absence of a link to a term on web pages on the internet. One vector and with point is not enough to describe the kernel. We introduce 2 more vectors, and with 2 points and with 3 points. The second vector n with 2 points describe the terms synonyms to avoid duplication in the kernel. The third vector n with 3 points describes satellite terms to describe possible storyline in the web text. To place a term in a cluster or in other words, combine 2 versions of the kernels into one. we introduce three criteria for the union or proximity of kernels. Criterion 1 describes the union of kernels by vector and with 1 point. Criterion 2 by vector with 2 points and with 2 points. The third criterion is entered by the date and time of appearance of the term on the web page. The time difference between the appearance of two kernels should not exceed a certain threshold value, D threshold. Software was developed to test the specified model and algorithm. The functional requirements for the software operation are shown on the slide number 8. Slide number 9 shows the main form of the software. The platform for the software development was chosen by JavaScript using the Node.js library WordPost framework. As a test case for testing the algorithm, a web project on psychology and astrology from United States, slide number 10, was chosen. The web content of this site has been preceded by software. We compared the results of the formation of kernels with the data of Google Analytics, slide number 11. The web content of this site has changed 3 times for the last 10 years. As you can see from Google Analytics data, each such change was accompanied by a surge in user activity. In the example, the semantic kernel was analyzed as a stage of its first change. The main task of the kernel was to fix in the minds of potential users of the site and the internet in general that the Celestian Timing, the project site, logo is associated with the direction of astrology and psychology. Subsequent changes to the kernel were aimed at the next 2 stages of the marketing of this web project. The first stage is to promote the services of this website, namely the construction of psychology portrait based on the user personal data. The second stage is to promote a new service, the School of Psychology and Astrology. In accordance with the stages, the semantic kernel of the website is also changed. Subsequent research of this topic includes development of an alternative approach to the description of the semantic kernel. A promising idea is to represent the kernel in matrix form using the principles of permutations based on expert assessments of relationships between terms. In this case, the metric contains the same elements as the search engine matrix. Then it is possible to use a vector space model to determine the proximity of kernel. In addition, it is promising to use a genetic algorithms to obtain an optimal semantic kernel on a set of existing or promising ones. Second way, development and testing of software in JavaScript language on the WordPost platform. It is required to design this software as a component with the possibilities of its subsequent integration into existing content management systems such as WordPress or OpenCart. Also, a third direction. Also, a promising area of research is the analysis of profiles in social networks in order to identify semantic kernels and on their basis search for potential buyers of a product or service. Thank you for attention.